Hey everyone, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in my tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. So it's Wednesday, which means that it's recipe day. And I'm really excited about this recipe because it is my, I'll say famous in air quotes, baked mac and cheese. It's one of my kids' favorite recipes. So I'm really excited to show you this recipe. I think you're gonna like it. I think your kids will even like it. And it's the perfect meal for a cold day. And I think we all need a little comfort food nowadays. Here are the ingredients that you're gonna need to make this recipe. I know this looks like a lot of things, but it's just basically mostly spices, and it's really worth making. So you're going to need some elbow macaroni. That's pretty traditional for mac and cheese, so that's what I use. You could technically use whatever pasta that you have or you want. One small head of cauliflower, I don't know. I call it cauliflower. If that's wrong, feel free to make fun of me in the comments. This is about the size of my hand, which doesn't help you at all because you don't know what size my hand is. But one small head of cauliflower. You're going to need some tapioca starch, also called tapioca flour, some nutritional yeast. Yes, that's not surprising because basically put that in every vegan dish I make. You're going to want some paprika. You can use smoked paprika or sweet paprika. I like smoked paprika in most of my dishes because I think it adds extra depth of flavor. A little bit of turmeric to give color and a little taste. Some onion powder. You can use garlic powder or minced garlic. I'm going to use some minced garlic, or a couple of heads of fresh garlic that you're going to mince. Some non-dairy milk. I'm going to use almond milk in this recipe since that's what I have. Some miso paste. You can find this is fermented soybean paste, and it gives this really good cheesy umami flavor to the dish. Don't skip this. This is really important. So is the nooch. And you can find this in the cooler section. Usually it's where the cheeses are and stuff like that. One small jar of roasted red peppers. Not spicy, just roasted red peppers. A little bit of olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, some salt and pepper to taste. We're going to put that in at the end if we need it. A half a cup of soaked cashews, and some either seasoned breadcrumbs or crisp fried onions for the topping. I'm going to use these because frankly I'm kind of addicted to it. So that's what you need for ingredients. You're also going to need a pot of water boiling on the stove, a casserole dish. This is I think a 7 by 10 casserole dish, so an oven safe dish. A little bit of cooking spray to spray it so it doesn't stick, or you could use margarine or whatever you want. Some measuring cups for dry, measuring cup for wet, a cutting board, and some measuring spoons. You're also going to need a blender. I'm going to use my Vitamix or regular blender. That's where the soaking of the cashews is so important, because that way if you don't have the high-speed blender, you can still make this nice and creamy. If you don't have time to soak your cashews overnight, or you've forgotten, you can boil these on the stove for about 10 minutes to soften them up, and that will work just fine. First thing I want you to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I always forget to say that, so I'm quite proud of myself for remembering to say that at the beginning of the recipe this time around. And please don't worry about taking notes while we're going through this. I'm going to put the full recipe with all of the measurements down below in the show notes. So preheat your oven to 350 degrees and put your pot of water to boil on the stove. Mine's already boiling. I'm going to salt that water just like you would for any other pasta dish, to give the pasta a little bit of flavor while you're cooking it. And put in to that boiling water 1 cup of macaroni pasta. If you're not going to use the cauliflower in this recipe, you just want to use pasta, use 2 cups. So I'm pouring that in. I'm going to give it a little stir. And while that's coming to a boil, I'm going to cut up the cauliflower. And I am going to speed up this process a little bit so that you don't have to be bored. All right, so I've got my cauliflower cut up into small pieces. Not too big because you want them to cook in the oven. And now that the pasta is boiling, we're just going to let it cook for maybe 3 minutes or so. You don't really want it to be done because it's going to cook in the oven. Now that my pasta has cooked for about 3 minutes, it is soft, but definitely not done. So now I'm just going to quickly add in the cauliflower and let that cook for about 2 minutes. So really not very long at all. We just want to soften the cauliflower out a tiny bit. So it's been a couple more minutes since the cauliflower's been in there, so I'm going to turn this off and drain it. Okay, so the next step is to make the sauce. So to the cup of your mixer, you're going to add your half cup of soaked raw cashews. I've rinsed them. You want a half cup of nooch. And again, this adds a lot of cheesy flavor to the sauce. And that is nutritional yeast. That's what nooch is. It's a horrible name for something that's really so tasty. A tablespoon of onion powder. A teaspoon of paprika. I'm using smoked, but you can use sweet, just not hot. A quarter teaspoon of turmeric. This will add a lot of yellow color and a little bit of flavor to it, but you don't want to use too much because it's very strong. 3 tablespoons of your tapioca starch. One and a half cups of non-dairy milk. Don't use sweetened, but whatever unsweetened non-dairy milk that you have. Now 1 jar of roasted red peppers. Again, not spicy, just regular red peppers. And I am going to drain this. Just get most of the liquid out. This jar is just about 300 milliliters, which I believe is about 1 1/4 cups. Then minced garlic. Now you can use a teaspoon of powdered. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of minced. Just really to taste, but you want the sauce to have a lot of flavor because it's going on the pasta, which doesn't have any flavor. So 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Yes, fresh is better. I don't have fresh lemons, so we're just going to use this stuff. 1 tablespoon of the miso paste. The miso paste is really important in this recipe, so do your best to find it. You can find it online, and be generous with it. It's got a lot of flavor, and it adds cheesiness and that umami flavor to this recipe. And then 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Now, you can skip the olive oil. However, it does add a lot to the consistency of the sauce because regular mac and cheese made with dairy has a lot of oil in it. The cheese does. So 1 tablespoon isn't a lot for the whole recipe, but it will add that proper consistency that I like. All right, have I remembered everything? Yes, I have. So now we're just going to blend this up really, really well. Take your time, scrape down the sides if you need to. If you don't have a high-speed blender, it's gonna take a little longer. But how well you blend it, how long you blend it, will really make a difference in the consistency of the sauce. now's the time to taste the sauce and see if it needs anything else. I'm gonna add some pepper, but otherwise I think that the flavor is really good. This is the consistency that you want. The tapioca starch will thicken it right up. If you can't find tapioca starch, just use cornstarch or potato starch. But the tapioca starch, the reason it's so good in cheese recipes when you're making non-dairy cheese is because it actually thickens things up. It makes them also kind of gooey and stretchy, which, let's face it, is kind of what we want. And now I'm just going to get our pan prepped. Put in our pasta and cauliflower. And now we're just going to pour our sauce over top. Stir it up just a little bit to make sure that the sauce is getting to the bottom. Make sure all of the cauliflower is tucked into this nice blanket of creamy sauce. That's really good, if I do say so myself. And apparently I always do. So we're going to cover this and put it in the oven for 20 minutes. And then we're going to pull it out. Sprinkle I'm going to use the crispy fried onions over the top, but you can use seasoned breadcrumbs. And then we're going to put it back in the oven uncovered for 10 to 15 minutes. Well, my timer's gone off, so let's get it out of the oven and then we can put the topping on it. Now it's going to still look a little liquidy, but we can see that it's starting to thicken up. All right, so I'm going to put it back in the oven uncovered, and I'm going to start with 15 minutes, and then I'm going to poke in there and see how the cauliflower is doing, if it's cooked. So let's pull it out and see what it looks like. I've kind of lost my light a little bit, but let's dig in and see how it is. Now this will thicken as it sits. I always burn myself. I try not to, but I always do. That is so good. I hope you try this recipe. Let me know if you like it. Let me know what kind of changes you make to it. Like I say, you don't have to add the cauliflower. You can just use 2 cups of pasta. I like to add the cauliflower because it adds extra veggies in there, so I feel less guilty about eating a lot of it. But I think you'll like it. It's easy. The most work is cutting up the cauliflower and boiling the pasta. Other than that, everything goes into the blender. I did bake it for 30 minutes with the foil on, and then I took the foil off. I baked it for another 15, tested it. It wasn't quite done yet, so I baked it for another 10, so another 25 uncovered, and it's perfect now. So thanks for watching. Sorry about the lighting, but it got late and it got dark, and it's now supper time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the weekend for another video.